Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Drama Flavored Coffee. This story comes from the subreddit Relationship Advice, posted by Throwaway2946. My husband, 29 male, had a thing with a girl before we got together. Now she's going to be my sister-in-law, and I, 27 female, thinks she still has feelings for him. My husband and I have been together for 8 years, married for 1.5. Before we got together, he had a small thing with another girl. I keep saying small thing because he swears that's all it was, and I believe him. He said they hung out twice, kissed once, and right after they kissed, he realized she wasn't his person, and they went back to being friends. We met, started dating, and fast forward about 3 years when this other girl starts dating his brother. They were friendly with each other, but nothing suspicious or weird at all. I admittedly felt weird being around them both in family settings, but ultimately no one did anything wrong, and after time it started to lose its oddness. Fast forward about 5 years, and now we are married and they are engaged. They have one other brother who got married this past year, and this is where things got a little weird. We went to the wedding rehearsal and we had to squeeze past her to get to our seats, so my husband jokingly sat in her lap. She said, "Woo!" told me to come get him and invited him to sit next to her. She said, "Woo!" told me to come get him and invited him to sit next to her. These things alone bothered me, but little occurrences kept happening through the night. She would turn away from her fiancé to have long conversations with my husband instead. Mind you, I was sitting next to him and she wouldn't include me in the conversations at all, almost to the point it felt intentional. Among other little things, asking him about his favorite sports teams, how our dogs are. At one point, she started playing with his hair. Again, none of these things were terrible things to do, but it was enough to make me uncomfortable. So on the way home, I talked to him about it and told him essentially how I felt a little weird seeing these actions given their history, and I asked him to distance himself from her a bit, not to avoid her or anything, but not to do things like jokingly sit in her lap. And he said okay. Feel it's important to include when I told him how I felt, he felt awful. He started crying because he was so upset he made me feel like that. The next day was the wedding, and he tried to keep his distance, but she was all over him. It started again with weird small things. She attempted the isolated conversations, though this time he went out of his way to include me. She invited him to go to the bar and get drinks for the table. He invited me too. Then she started comparing him, and this is where I see the red flag. She started playing with his hair again and said something along the lines of, "Your hair is better than your brother's." And throughout the night, she kept going. She told him he was nicer than him. She told him he looked better in a tux than him. She told him he was funnier than him, all of which he basically responded with some version of thank you. On the way home, he was like, "I see what you mean. It is weird." His brother's and her wedding is in a couple months, and I am having so much anxiety, not because my husband did anything, but because I don't know how to deal with this girl becoming family when I'm fairly sure she still has feelings for him, and neither of us know what to do to distance her. We thought about telling his brother, but we don't want to cause drama, and we thought about talking with her, but we aren't confrontational. I feel it's also important to note she and his brother do not have a great relationship, and I feel kind of shady saying this, but no one thinks their marriage is going to last. He cheated on her more than once, and we have heard her yelling at him in the background of various phone calls. Again, not adding this part to be mean, but I feel like it might be playing into her actions, like maybe she thinks she got the wrong brother or something, and I don't know where to go from here. Okay, personal opinion here. It sounds like your husband unintentionally started this whole mess. Because it sounds like before the wedding rehearsal, things were fine. And then he jokingly sat in her lap. Like, who does that? That was major error on your husband's part. If my husband jokingly sat in another woman's lap, yeah, I would be pissed because it's disrespectful to you and it's just plain weird behavior. What husband does that? So your husband's definitely at fault. I'm glad that you confronted him almost right away about it because that was definitely something that needed to be addressed. And it looks to me like that is the thing that gave this girl an in to say, "Oh my God, he's giving me attention." he gave her an inch and now she's taking a mile. She's going over the top. She's going for it now. But considering the next day he was remorseful that day, and the next day he did everything he could to, dissuade her attention and include you in everything. That was great. So I guess that was just a moment of stupidity on his part at the wedding rehearsal. I think you need to have. There's nothing you can do about his brother's relationship with this girl. You kind of just gotta just let that play out however it plays out. He cheated on her. It sounds like she has no respect for him and their relationship or your relationship. So I think that part of this, you need to just let it play out however it plays out. I think you should have a conversation with her and he needs to make it clear to her that she needs to back off and she needs to respect your marriage. I can almost guarantee, like I can see it right now, she's going to, if I had to guess, she's going to deny that she was being flirty or giving him unwanted attention. She's just going to say, oh, that's just, she's just being a friend and that's how she acts. And you can't control how she's going to respond to what you say, but you can control how you respond to the way she acts. So, and that's all you can really do. So just make it very clear. I know you don't like confrontation. I don't like confrontation either, but this is your marriage and you need to just be very firm and clear that she needs to respect your marriage. And then just kind of maintain some distance from her. Okay, so let's go to the comments. Spoken Divinity says, were it me, I discreetly but firmly have your husband tell her he's not comfortable with her behavior and finds it offensive that she'd behave that way while engaged. If she keeps it up, he or another more neutral family member should have a conversation with his brother about the things she says and does. Jiltro says, I don't understand why the husband doesn't just shut it down. When she says your hair is nicer than your brother's, why isn't his reaction, that's a rude thing to say about your future husband and my brother? Like she's way out of line, but husband needs to be assertive here. Yeah, I agree. Whenever she makes comments, he needs to say something right away. Otherwise, she's just going to assume that he likes her attention and keep going. In Linwee says, honestly, she's been around for years at this point. I don't think him marrying her will change anything significantly from how it is now. I'd say just keep doing whatever you're doing now. Like your husband makes a point of not being alone with her, doesn't engage in her flirting, and generally treats her like a sister-in-law and nothing else. If she keeps it up or escalates, your husband can say, hey, I'm not really comfortable when you do XYZ. Could you please not? And maybe she'll get upset or angry, but that's not your problem. You two get to live your lives, and if she is actually only marrying his brother to be close to him, that's sad for her, but ultimately not your problem to solve. Z Twilight says, she is seeking your husband's attention because she is insecure. When she physically touches your husband, like touching his hair, he needs to step back and make a very obvious expression of distaste. It has to come from him. If it comes from you, you look jealous and she gets validation. When she flirts with him, your husband needs to physically touch you and pull you close to him to display to her that she is not interested. Again, this needs to come from him, not you. Your best approach is to smile and be gracious towards her and encourage her attentions towards her fiancé. Say things like, it's so sweet the way Bobby does XYZ for you. You and your husband need to have a united front whenever dealing with her. Yeah, I agree. I think she just wants the attention. She got it when your husband initially jokingly sat in her lap. That was the attention that she got, and she liked it. And then she just wanted more from him. Now she's honing in on your husband, and the only way to stop it is to really, be firm and just whenever she makes a comment or plays with his hair, he needs to be very clear that it makes him uncomfortable, and she needs to stop. This story comes from the subreddit Am I the Asshole, posted by Warzone3099. Am I the asshole for refusing to change my son's chosen first and middle name per my brother-in-law's request? So my wife, 32 female, and I, 31 male, struggled with infertility for a while. My wife's now 7 months pregnant with a baby boy. We started searching for our first and middle name, and since I come from Irish origins, we decided to settle on my great uncle's first name and my grandfather's middle name. We told my in-laws about it. My brother-in-law, a doctor with a superiority complex, thought the name was awesome. Unbeknownst to us, he and his wife decided to basically take not just the first, but also the middle name and use them for their son who was born 3 weeks ago. I was not pleased, and I hated that they basically stolen the names, but my wife and I decided to ignore them and just keep the names. We didn't make a fuss out of it till my brother-in-law called to ask about the new names we chose. I told him we were still sticking with the original first and middle names we chose. He sounded confused, saying we no longer have a right to these names after he and his wife claimed them, and said it was strange that we're still planning on using them. I laughed and said that they didn't claim shit. Fact of the matter is, he and his wife stole those names from us and should deal with it. He got mad and demanded I put my wife on the phone, but we were both already on speaker and my wife backed me up 100%. Brother-in-law then hung up and did 2 things. 1, sent his family, father-in-law, mother-in-law, sister-in-law, etc., to come at me specifically. And 2, send long lists of first and middle name suggestions, demanding we choose from them and leave him and his family alone. My wife got into a fight with him just a day ago and told him he and his wife didn't even choose those names out of love, but out of spite to stick it to me for no reason. Father-in-law came over in the evening and started yelling obscenities at me, accusing me of turning his daughter against her brother, calling me a pity bastard, and claiming I own neither of those to name despite having familiar ties with. I said if I don't own those names, then his doctor's son sure as hell doesn't. I told him to leave, but he kept arguing till I said I'd call the police. He left then, but is now getting mother-in-law constantly calling my wife, telling her to do the right thing if she still wants a relationship with her nephew. The conflict gets worse, and my wife's caving in and cracking under pressure. I keep refusing to change the name. So Reddit, am I the asshole? Okay, personal opinion here. You are definitely not the asshole. Your brother-in-law and his wife are the assholes, and so are your father-in-law and mother-in-law and anyone else who's siding with him. It's so bizarre. I mean, you said that he took the name to give it to their son that was born 3 weeks ago, but what were they calling him? What were they calling the kid for the past 3 weeks? And I don't understand why your wife's entire family is siding with your brother-in-law. You guys told them this name first, and then all of a sudden the brother-in-law loved it and decided to change his baby's name to this name, and everyone is like, oh, okay, makes total sense. Like, that's so bizarre. Definitely don't back down. I mean, I understand your wife doesn't want to cause conflict with her family. She doesn't want to lose a relationship with her brother-in-law, but the brother-in-law is just being ridiculous, like beyond ridiculous. And it's insane that has this entitled thought process that he can just take the name you chose. And I mean, you were going to keep the name so that, both cousins have the same name, and you were okay with that. Now the brother-in-law is saying he's demanding that you choose a different name. That's just absurd. But don't change the name, because this is like the first thing. I know something else. If you change the name and crack under pressure, something similar is going to happen in the future, where you decide something and then the brother-in-law is again going to claim it as his own, and then it's just gonna happen over and over again, and this is just going to set the precedent for the future. Okay, so let's go to the comments. Tweaky Wolf says, not the asshole. He basically said, hey, I like what you're doing, so I'm gonna and you can't. That's not how the world works. Also, that family sounds messed up, man. Hulkemo says, my sister-in-law had this happen. She used my brother's middle name as my nephew's and chose a first name that they both liked. Her sister named her baby the same name despite not having any ties to it, and my sister-in-law didn't even let it faze her. She just named my nephew the name they chose and stopped talking to her sister until she got over her petty bullshit. Names are names. Cousins share names all the time. Just ignore them completely until they get it together. No time with baby until they act like adults. Phillies Luther says, my cousin and her ex's sister were pregnant at the same time. My cousin had the name Alexander picked out. She loved the name from the time she was like 10. Ex-sister-in-law had her baby early and stole the name, including the middle name, which was my cousin's little brother's name. He was named the male version of my mom's name. My cousin was devastated. She ended up naming her son the same thing, but with a different spelling. And Bobble Drew says, not the asshole. Y'all need to send a message to your in-laws that you're launching a cooling off period of X days in which you will not be accepting communications from them. After that, the topic of names will not be mentioned and each infraction will be met with radio silence. First infraction, 1 week. Second, 2 weeks. Third, 4 weeks. You need to make clear the subject is closed and that stupidity has consequences. Yeah, definitely stick to your guns because it sounds like this isn't about the name. It just sounds like the brother-in-law wants to exert power over everyone. He'd be like, hey, I can just take this name that you chose and everyone's going to be okay with it because that's what I want. It sounds like he's the asshole. He's a jerk. And don't give in because if you give in, then it'll just spiral and it'll keep happening and you'll just be miserable. Well, that's it for today. Thanks for joining me for this episode of Drama Flavored Coffee. If you like this video, please drop a like and subscribe to my channel for new content. See you guys next time.